The war room of the Zathari flagship hummed with quiet confidence. Fleet Admiral Krenak stood before a massive holographic display, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly in the projection. His three eyes studied the data streams that floated around the world like digital clouds. "Commander Telvis, your assessment," Krenak said, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The tactical officer stepped forward, her scales shimmering under the ship's lights. "Admiral, the target world designated Sol 3 presents minimal threat. The inhabitants are pre-FTL, divided into nearly 200 competing nations and armed with primitive kinetic weapons. Their most advanced explosive devices are fusion-based, but they lack any orbital defense capability." Krenak nodded. The Zathari hegemony had conquered 47 worlds in the last century. This would be conquest number 48. Simple, routine. The inhabitants called their world Earth in their dominant languages. A pleasant enough name for what would soon become another colony world. "What about the classification marking?" a voice asked from the back of the room. Krenak turned to see Intelligence Officer Vaxran pointing to a small notation in the ancient star charts. The Admiral enlarged the display. There, in the old language, was a warning. Death World Classification, Extreme. Indigenous Species, Survival Specialists. Recommended action, avoid contact. The Admiral laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "That data is over 1,000 years old. Look at them." He gestured to video feeds showing humans going about their daily lives. "They are soft. They live in comfortable cities. They fight wars with rules and treaties. These are not the savage creatures the ancient surveys feared." Around him, his officers murmured agreement. The Zathari had evolved on a world of moderate climate and gentle seasons. The Velkar, their allies, came from a water world of calm seas. The Kreth had known only the stability of their moon colonies. Together they had built an empire on superior technology and overwhelming force. "The invasion plan is standard," Telvis continued. 50 warships, 10,000 ground troops. We strike military installations first, then broadcast surrender demands. Historical data suggests primitive species capitulate within 48 hours when faced with orbital superiority. Krenak approved the plan with a gesture. "Execute on my command. Let us bring civilization to Sol 3. The fleet transitioned from hyperspace 3 days later. It was a Tuesday morning on Earth, though the Zathari had no word for such a concept. Their computers had calculated the optimal moment, when the planet's major military powers were at maximum distance from each other in their rotation. The first strikes were precise. Orbital bombardment platforms destroyed key military bases. Communication satellites turned to expanding clouds of debris. Government centers found their command structures decapitated by directed energy weapons that left perfectly circular holes in buildings. Then came the broadcast. The message went out in 47 Earth languages, translated by the fleet's computers. "Inhabitants of Sol 3. You have been deemed suitable for integration into the Zathari hegemony. Cease all resistance. Surrender your military forces. Submit to processing. You have 12 hours to comply." Krenak waited for the expected response: panic, chaos, desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, the communication channels filled with something else entirely. From North America. "You picked the wrong planet, buddy." From Europe. "Good luck with that." From Asia. A stream of text that the computers struggled to translate, but seemed to involve detailed descriptions of what humans would do to the invaders. But the strangest response came from multiple sources. "Remember Pearl Harbor." "What does this mean?" Krenak demanded of his intelligence officer. Vaxran consulted his database. "Pearl Harbor appears to be a reference to a surprise military attack in their history. But I do not understand the context. They are invoking a memory of being attacked?" The Admiral dismissed it. "Primitive psychological responses. Deploy landing forces. Let us end this quickly." As the first landing craft descended toward major population centers, something unexpected appeared on the sensors. Military assets from every human nation, which moments before had been pointed at each other, were now reorienting. Tanks rolled toward landing zones. Fighter jets scrambled. Naval vessels changed course. Even more confusing, the humans' global communication network exploded with activity. But it was not panic. The fleet's monitoring systems detected something else in the digital chatter. Determination, anger, and something the Zathari computers flagged as dark humor. One transmission, broadcast from a military facility, summed up the human response. "They wanted to see what we do when we stop fighting each other. Let's show them." Krenak felt the first cold touch of doubt. The humans had not scattered. They had not panicked. Every government on the planet had ceased hostilities with their neighbors and redirected their entire military apparatus toward the invaders. In that moment, watching Earth's united response forming on his displays, the Admiral wondered if perhaps the ancient warning in those 1,000-year-old charts had not been outdated after all. The landing craft entered the atmosphere. The invasion of Earth had begun. But so, though the Zathari did not yet know it, had their education in what it meant to attack a species that had survived by fighting everything on a death world, including themselves, for hundreds of thousands of years. The first Zathari landing craft touched down in the ruins of what had been a military base outside Washington. Squad leader Vornath emerged from the transport, his weapon ready, scanning for resistance. The base was destroyed, exactly as planned. Smoke rose from collapsed buildings. But something felt wrong. The humans should have been in disarray. Instead, his tactical display showed organized movement all around his position. Then the first missile struck. Vornath's shields flared blue as the primitive explosive detonated nearby. More followed. The humans were not fleeing. They were attacking. From buildings, from underground positions, from vehicles that had seemed abandoned. The ambush was coordinated and brutal. "Command, we need support," Vornath transmitted. "They are not surrendering. They are everywhere." Across the planet, the same story repeated. In Moscow, Zathari troops found themselves pinned down by artillery that seemed to know exactly where they would land. In Beijing, human tanks emerged from underground facilities that orbital scans had missed. In London, the invaders discovered that every civilian building had become a fortress. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked the hegemony forces. When their vehicles were destroyed, they fought on foot. When their weapons ran out, they used whatever they could find. When cornered, they did not surrender. They fought harder. Admiral Krenak watched the reports with growing alarm. His forces held technological superiority, but the humans had something else. They knew how to fight in ways the hegemony had never encountered. They used the terrain. They set traps. They struck from unexpected angles and vanished before his troops could respond. "They fight without honor," one of his commanders complained. "They hide. They ambush. They refuse to meet us in open battle." Krenak said nothing. The humans were not fighting without honor. They were fighting to win. There was a difference. After 72 hours of continuous combat, something unprecedented happened. A Zathari unit, surrounded and cut off from support, did what no hegemony force had done in 2 centuries of conquest. They surrendered. The prisoners were treated according to something the humans called the Geneva Conventions. They were given medical care. They were fed. They were housed in facilities that, while guarded, were not torture chambers. This confused the Zathari soldiers more than anything else. "Why would you care for your enemies?" Intelligence officer Vaxarin interviewed the prisoners. What he learned chilled him. "They trained for this," one soldier said, still in shock. "All of them. From childhood. They learned to fight. They study war the way we study mathematics." When I asked one of their soldiers how they knew where to set their traps, he laughed. He said they had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They know every trick because they invented every trick. Vaxarin compiled his report with shaking hands. The humans were not primitive. They were experienced. Every nation on Earth had its own military history stretching back centuries. They had fought wars that lasted generations. They had developed strategies for every terrain, every situation, every possible enemy. And now they were using all of that accumulated knowledge against the invaders. In the skies above Earth, human pilots were learning to fight Zathari craft. They lost badly at first. The alien technology was superior in every way. But the humans adapted. They watched. They learned. And when their missiles ran out, they did something that made no sense to the Zathari. They rammed. A human fighter would lock onto an alien craft and simply crash into it at full speed. Both would be destroyed. The Zathari called it suicide. The humans called it victory, because every time it happened, it meant one less enemy ship in the sky. The civilian resistance emerged quickly. Hunters in rural areas used their rifles to shoot down scout drones. Farmers planted explosives in fields where landing craft would set down. Hackers infiltrated alien communication networks. In Texas, a grandmother named Martha Henderson became a global hero when she shot down a Zathari scout drone with her shotgun while defending her property. The humans broadcast her interview worldwide. "They came to my farm. Nobody threatens my family on my land, so I got my gun and I solved the problem. That simple." Krenak reviewed footage from dozens of battles. In every one, the pattern was the same. The The Zathari would establish a position. The humans would attack it from multiple directions. When the aliens adapted, the humans would change tactics. It was exhausting. It was relentless. It was effective. His science officer presented new findings. Admiral, we have completed our analysis of the planet itself. The designation was correct. Earth is a Class 12 death world. Extreme weather patterns. Aggressive predator species. Deadly microorganisms. The gravity is above galactic average. The atmospheric pressure fluctuates dramatically. This world has been trying to kill its dominant species since they evolved. And they survived. Krenak said quietly. More than survived, sir. They thrived. They spread to every environment on the planet. Deserts, frozen wastelands, jungles, mountains, they adapted to all of it. And then when they had conquered their world, they started fighting each other. For practice, Krenak closed his 3 eyes. The Hegemony Council was demanding results. But how could he explain this? How could he tell them that they had sent 50 warships to conquer a species that viewed war as a fundamental part of their existence? A species that had been forged in conflict since before they discovered fire? The transmission came from Earth's emergency government, a hastily formed council of world leaders. Their message was broadcast in clear Zathari. To the Zathari hegemony, you have made a grave mistake. You thought we were weak because we were divided. But we were never weak. We were just distracted. Now you have our full attention. Leave our system or learn what happens when you wake up a sleeping death world. This is your only warning. Krenak knew he should ignore the primitive threat. He should order the orbital bombardment platforms to level their cities. He should teach these creatures the price of defiance. But as he watched another of his landing craft explode in a ball of fire, shot down by a human weapon that should not have been able to reach it, he felt something he had not experienced in his long military career. He felt afraid. The orbital bombardment began at dawn. The Hegemony Council had lost patience with Krenak's warnings about human resilience. They demanded swift action. The Admiral, bound by duty and honor, complied. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking cities with precision. Millions died in moments. The destruction was total and terrifying. Entire urban centers were reduced to glass and ash. This, the Hegemony believed, would finally break the human spirit. They were wrong. The human response was not surrender. It was fury. Across Earth, the message went out from surviving government centers. World leaders addressed their populations not with despair, but with resolve. They have struck us, one president said from a bunker deep underground. They have killed our people. They have destroyed our cities. They think this will make us kneel. They do not understand who we are. We are humans. We do not break. We do not surrender. We fight. And we will show them what that means. The bombardment had one unintended effect. It unified humanity completely. Every difference, every conflict, every historical grievance became meaningless in the face of extinction. Former enemies worked together. Scientists shared research. Military commanders coordinated strategies. Engineers pooled resources. In underground facilities around the world, human scientists examined captured Zathari technology. They dissected weapons. They analyzed armor. They reverse-engineered shield generators. What should have taken years took weeks. Necessity drove innovation at a pace the galaxy had never seen. A breakthrough came from a team in Switzerland. They had discovered how to adapt the alien shield technology to work with human power sources. Within days, the design was distributed globally. Factories that had built cars now built shield generators. Weapons manufacturers that had created bullets now created energy weapons. The first human counterattack came 2 weeks after the orbital bombardment. Modified intercontinental ballistic missiles, equipped with reverse-engineered shield-penetrating warheads, launched from silos that the Zathari had believed destroyed. The missiles streaked into orbit faster than the alien point defense systems could track. 2 Zathari battleships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The remaining fleet scattered in confusion. How had the primitives reached them? How had they penetrated their shields? The answer was simple and terrifying. Humans learned fast. Krenak's forces were designed for conquest, not sustained combat. They expected resistance to end once sufficient force was applied. But Earth's resistance only intensified. Every battle cost the Hegemony ships, soldiers, and equipment that could not be easily replaced. Supply lines stretched back to their nearest colony, weeks away even at FTL speeds. Meanwhile, humans were manufacturing weapons and equipment on their own planet, using their own resources, at a rate that shocked the alien analysts. In the prisoner camps, captured Zathari soldiers watched human news broadcasts. A xenobiologist named Trellick paid special attention. Unlike his fellow prisoners, he tried to understand these creatures. What he learned horrified him. The broadcast showed human history. Thousands of years of continuous warfare, empires rising and falling, weapons growing more deadly with each generation, tactics evolving through endless conflict. The humans had not just survived on a death world, they had made that death world into a training ground. We never stood a chance, Trellick said to himself in his cell. They have been preparing for this their entire existence. They evolved fighting predators. Then they fought each other. They developed technology specifically to kill. Their whole civilization is built on the foundation of warfare. He requested an audience with the human commanders. They granted it, curious about what the alien scientist wanted to say. I need you to understand something, Trellick said through a translator. The hegemony does not think like you. When they receive reports of their losses here, they will not withdraw. They will send more ships, a fleet 10 times the size of this one. They cannot afford to let a primitive species defeat them. It would threaten their entire empire. The human general listened carefully. Then he smiled. An expression that Trellick had learned meant something very different to humans than it did to his own species. Then we will fight that fleet too, the general said. And the next one, and the one after that. We will fight until you stop coming, or until there is no one left on either side to fight. Those are your options. Trellick stared at the human. You would sacrifice everything? Your entire species? To remain free? Yes, without hesitation. That is what you and your hegemony do not understand. We would rather die as humans than live as slaves. This is not negotiable. This is who we are. The xenobiologist realized something in that moment. The hegemony had not attacked a planet. They had awakened something that should have been left alone. They had given humanity a common enemy, and in doing so, had created the most dangerous force in the galaxy. A united human race with nothing to lose. That night, Trellick made a decision that would brand him a traitor to the hegemony. He offered the humans everything he knew: fleet positions, tactical doctrines, technological specifications, supply routes, command structures, everything. Why? They asked him. Because you are going to win, Trellick said simply. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And when you do, I want to be on the side that survives, because I have seen what happens when humans decide something must be destroyed. They do not stop. They do not compromise. They simply continue until the task is complete or they are dead. The hegemony does not have that determination. You do. With Trellick's information, human forces began targeting Zathari supply ships. They raided logistics centers. They destroyed communication relays. They turned the invasion fleet's greatest advantage, its technology, into a weakness. Because advanced technology requires advanced support infrastructure, and that infrastructure could be attacked. In orbit, Admiral Krenak watched his carefully planned conquest dissolve into chaos. His ships were damaged, his troops were demoralized, his supply lines were compromised, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. Then the long-range sensors detected something new. The reinforcement fleet had arrived at the edge of the solar system. 300 warships, the largest armada the hegemony had ever assembled. They would arrive in Earth orbit within days. Krenak expected the humans to panic. Instead, they accelerated their preparations. Their response was broadcast to his fleet in perfect Zathari. Bring them all. We will be waiting. The breakthrough came from a team of engineers in Japan. They had been working non-stop on a damaged Zathari cruiser that human forces had captured mostly intact. The ship had suffered engine failure during atmospheric combat and crashed in the Pacific Ocean. Recovery teams had pulled it from the depths. Inside its databanks, they found everything. Complete technical specifications, navigation systems, weapons arrays, and most importantly, the principles behind faster-than-light travel. Human scientists around the world abandoned sleep. They worked in shifts that blurred together into a continuous effort. The FTL drive was incredibly complex, but it was not impossible to understand. Within 3 weeks, they had not only figured out how it worked, but had begun adapting it to human manufacturing capabilities. The humans also reverse-engineered the shield technology completely. Now they could build it from scratch. Factories that had once made consumer electronics now produced military-grade energy shields. The transformation of Earth's industrial capacity was total. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Krenak faced a crisis he could not have imagined. Half of his fleet officers had sent him a formal request to retreat. In hegemony military tradition, this was not quite a mutiny, but it was close. They argued that the mission was unsustainable, that losses were unacceptable, that the humans could not be conquered by conventional means. The admiral refused. "We do not run from primitives," he declared. "The reinforcement fleet will restore order. We hold our position." But Krenak knew, deep in his core, that something fundamental had changed. The humans were no longer defending. They were preparing to attack. The proof came when Earth's combined military launched Operation Thunderbolt. Every functional spacecraft, every modified missile, every weapon that could reach orbit was deployed simultaneously. The attack came from all directions at once. Human pilots flew captured alien fighters alongside jury-rigged Earth vessels. They used tactics that made no sense to the Zathari, because those tactics prioritized results over survival. Ships that were disabled became kinetic weapons, their pilots ejecting at the last moment as their craft slammed into alien vessels. The battle was chaos. The Zathari had superior technology, but the humans had superior determination. They also had the home advantage. Every piece of space debris, every destroyed satellite, every bit of orbital wreckage became a weapon in human hands. By the end of the engagement, humanity had lost 60% of its attacking force. But the Zathari orbital infrastructure was gone. Their bombardment platforms were destroyed. Their supply ships were crippled. Their communication networks were shattered. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth's skies were clear of alien presence. Trellick, the defector xenobiologist, requested permission to address the United Nations Emergency Council. They gathered in a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, world leaders linked by secure communications. "I must warn you," Trellick said, his translator rendering his words into dozens of human languages simultaneously. "The reinforcement fleet is not like the first invasion force. It is 10 times larger. 300 warships, 50,000 troops. The Hegemony Council is committed now. They will send everything they have rather than accept defeat by a pre-FTL species." The Secretary General of the UN studied the alien scientist. "What would you do in our position?" "Surrender," Trellick said without hesitation. "Negotiate terms. Save what you can of your civilization. You cannot win against those numbers." A general from China leaned forward. "And if we refuse to surrender, then you will fight, and you will die. The hegemony has never lost a conquest war. Never." The leaders looked at each other, some through video screens, some in person, representatives of nations that had fought each other for centuries. Now united by a simple truth, they would not kneel. The American president spoke for them all. "Then we will be the first to make them lose. We have something your hegemony has never faced before. We have nothing to lose and everything to fight for. We will fight that fleet. We will fight the next fleet. We will fight until there are no more fleets to send, or until we are extinct. Those are the only 2 outcomes we accept." Trellick felt something he had not experienced before. Hope mixed with terror. These creatures were insane. They were also magnificent. They truly would rather die than submit. And in that determination, he saw something the hegemony had lost long ago, the will to sacrifice everything for freedom. "Then I will help you," Trellick said. "I will give you everything I know. Fleet compositions, command structures, tactical weaknesses. If you are going to do this impossible thing, at least let me help you have a chance." With Trellick's intelligence, human military planners began preparing for the largest battle in their history. They fortified orbital positions. They laid minefields throughout the solar system. They prepared every weapon, every ship, every soldier for the coming storm. And in a facility beneath the Australian desert, human engineers completed humanity's first faster-than-light capable warship. It was crude compared to Zathari designs. It was cobbled together from salvaged parts and human ingenuity. It would probably fall apart after a few jumps, but it worked. The lead engineer looked at her creation with exhausted pride. "We can reach them now," she said. "They came to our home. Now we can go to theirs." The hegemony reinforcement fleet entered the outer solar system like a storm of steel and fire. 300 warships arranged in perfect battle formation. They expected to find a broken planet and scattered resistance. They expected an easy victory. Instead, they found a fortified Earth bristling with captured alien technology and human determination. They found minefields where there should have been empty space. They found coordinated defenses where there should have been panic. They found an enemy that had spent weeks preparing for this exact moment. The fleet commander, High Admiral Zenthar, studied the tactical displays with confusion. "These readings cannot be correct," he said. They show energy signatures consistent with our own shield technology. How is this possible? His science officer ran the analysis 3 times before responding. Hi, Admiral. It appears the humans have reverse-engineered our technology. They are using our own weapons against us. Zenthar sat back in his command chair. For the first time in his long career, he understood the true meaning of the ancient warning in those 1,000-year-old charts. Deathworld species did not just survive. They adapted. They overcame. They learned. And now humanity was about to teach the hegemony a lesson they would never forget. The second battle for Earth was about to begin. The hegemony armada entered the inner solar system expecting to find ruins. Instead, they found resistance. The minefields activated first. Thousands of explosive devices, some human-made and some salvaged from destroyed Zathari ships, detonated throughout the fleet's approach vector. The damage was minimal. The hegemony had excellent point defense systems. But the mines served their purpose. They forced the fleet to slow down, to spread out, to become cautious. And caution gave the humans time. The human space navy emerged from behind the moon. It was not an impressive force by hegemony standards. A mix of retrofitted Earthships and captured alien craft, held together by skill and determination. But what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in tactics. The humans did not form neat battle lines. They scattered. They attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. They used the debris fields from earlier battles as cover. They employed guerrilla warfare in space, a concept so foreign to hegemony doctrine that their tactical computers struggled to formulate responses. High Admiral Zenthar watched in disbelief as a human destroyer, severely damaged in venting atmosphere, accelerated directly toward one of his battleships. The human captain had ejected the crew in escape pods, then set the ship's engines to full power and aimed it like a missile. The impact was devastating. The destroyer's reactor detonated on contact, and the battleship broke apart in a cascade of explosions. They are using their own ships as weapons, his tactical officer said in shock. What kind of species does this? A desperate one, Zenthar replied. But even as he said it, he knew it was not desperation. It was calculation. The humans had determined that trading one destroyer for one battleship was an acceptable exchange. They were fighting a war of attrition, and they were willing to pay the price. The battle raged for hours. The hegemony's numerical advantage became a liability in the close-quarters combat the humans preferred. Their large fleet struggled to maneuver without risking collisions with their own ships. Meanwhile, human fighters darted through the chaos, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. On Earth's surface, life continued with defiant normalcy. Businesses opened their doors. Schools held classes in reinforced bunkers. Sports leagues played their games. The message was clear. Humanity refused to act defeated. Even as the battle raged in orbit, people went about their lives with determination. In a broadcast that reached both Earth and the hegemony fleet, a news anchor spoke calmly. Today marks the 47th day of the invasion. The stock market opened this morning with gains in the defense sector. The football season continues as scheduled, and in orbit, our forces continue to teach the Zathari why invading Earth was a mistake. Weather forecast for tomorrow: partly cloudy with a high chance of alien debris. The casual defiance enraged and confused the hegemony forces in equal measure. These creatures acted as if orbital warfare was merely an inconvenience. Then humanity revealed its trump card. A small task force led by the newly completed FTL ship Defiance made a jump that should have been impossible. They appeared not in Earth orbit, but 3 light-years away at a hegemony supply depot. The depot was designed to support the invasion fleet. It contained fuel, ammunition, repair equipment, and food for species adapted to non-Deathworld environments. It was also completely undefended, because the hegemony had never imagined that primitive humans could threaten their territory. The human strike force destroyed everything. They used the captured alien weapons they had learned to operate. They planted charges in fuel storage tanks. They sabotaged the FTL communication relay. Then they jumped back to Earth, leaving the depot as a spreading debris field. The news of the attack spread through hegemony space at the speed of light. Panic followed. The humans could reach them now. The primitives who were supposed to be contained to their single planet could now strike anywhere in hegemony territory. Colony worlds demanded protection. Trade routes required escorts. Military assets were pulled from other regions to defend the core worlds. The entire hegemony economy began to strain under the pressure of defending against an enemy they had foolishly awakened. Trellick, working with human military intelligence, had identified the key vulnerability. The hegemony strategy depended on overwhelming force and the assumption that their territory was safe. By threatening that safety, humanity had turned the invasion into an existential crisis for the entire hegemony. "You understand what you have done?" Trellick asked the human admiral who commanded the operation. "We have shown them that we can strike back," the admiral replied, "that we are not prey to be hunted, that we are a threat to their entire empire." "Exactly," Trellick said, "and now they must decide, continue this war and risk losing everything, or negotiate with a species they tried to conquer. Pride or survival. For the Hegemony Council, that will be a difficult choice." In orbit above Earth, High Admiral Zenthar received a priority communication from the Hegemony Council. The message was encrypted, marked urgent, and contained orders that made his blood run cold. They wanted to negotiate. The mighty Zathari hegemony, conquerors of 47 worlds, wanted to talk peace with a species they had invaded less than 2 months ago. The implications were staggering. If word got out that humanity had forced them to the negotiating table, other conquered species might rebel. The entire empire could collapse. But the alternative was worse. The humans had demonstrated that they could reach hegemony territory. They had shown that they would never surrender. They had united their entire species against a common enemy. And, most terrifying of all, they had proven that they could learn and adapt faster than any species the hegemony had encountered. If the war continued, the humans would eventually win. Not through superior technology, but through sheer determination. They would keep fighting, keep adapting, keep striking at hegemony assets until the cost became unbearable. Zenthar prepared the most difficult transmission of his career. He opened a channel to Earth's emergency government. "This is High Admiral Zenthar of the Zathari hegemony. I am authorized to discuss terms of cessation of hostilities. Will you receive our delegation?" The response came quickly. Too quickly. The humans had been expecting this. "We will receive your delegation. But understand this. We do not negotiate from a position of weakness. You came to our home. You killed our people. You destroyed our cities. The terms will reflect that reality. If you want peace, you will pay for it." For the first time in 2 centuries, the hegemony had not just failed to conquer a world. They had been forced to ask for peace. The age of easy conquest was over. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever. And somewhere in a bunker beneath Switzerland, human leaders prepared for the most important negotiation in their species' history. They had survived the invasion. Now they had to secure the peace, and they would do so with the same determination they had brought to the war, because that was what humans did. They adapted. They overcame. They won. The delegation arrived on a small transport, escorted by human fighters that kept their weapons locked but not firing. The hegemony representatives included High Admiral Zenthar, 3 council members, and Trellick, who had been requested specifically by the humans as a neutral observer. They met in Geneva, in a room that had once hosted peace negotiations between human nations. Now it would host negotiations between species. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present. The human delegation was led by diplomats and military leaders from every major nation. They sat across from the hegemony representatives, and for a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the Secretary General of the United Nations began. "You came to our world uninvited. You attacked without provocation. You killed millions of our people. You destroyed our cities. And now you want to negotiate peace. Very well. Let us discuss terms." A hegemony council member, his translator rendering his words into English, responded carefully. "We acknowledge that the invasion was unsuccessful. We propose a mutual cessation of hostilities. Both sides withdraw. No further conflict." "No," the American president said flatly. "That is not how this works. You do not get to invade, lose, and then walk away as if nothing happened." The Chinese premier laid out a datapad. "These are our terms. Full reparations for damages caused, technology transfers including FTL communications, advanced materials, and medical knowledge, formal recognition of Earth as an independent sovereign power, a non-aggression pact enforced by the Hegemony Council, and unrestricted access to galactic trade networks." The hegemony representatives looked at each other. "These terms are excessive," one of them protested. "We cannot simply give you our technology. We cannot grant you equal status. You are a pre-FTL civilization." The Russian general smiled coldly. "We were a pre-FTL civilization. Then you gave us your ships to study. You gave us a reason to unite. You gave us a reason to advance a century of technology in 2 months. We have FTL capability now. We have energy weapons. We have shields. We took your technology and made it ours. The Indian diplomat added, and more importantly, we have proven we can reach your territory. The depot we destroyed was just a demonstration. We have mapped 12 more targets. Supply stations, communication relays, fuel depots, all undefended, all vulnerable. We can make this war very expensive for you. High Admiral Zenthar spoke for the first time. You are threatening us? While we have a fleet in orbit around your planet? A human general leaned forward. His name badge read Martinez, and his uniform showed the marks of recent combat. Yes, because we have something you do not. We have nothing left to lose. You destroyed our largest cities. You killed millions of our people. You united our entire species in hatred of your empire. If you leave this room without agreeing to our terms, we will make it our mission to destroy the hegemony, not defeat it. Destroy it. We will send ships to every hegemony world, another general continued. We will target your infrastructure, your economy, your trade. We will make your empire unsustainable. We will show every species you have conquered that resistance is possible. We will burn your hegemony to ashes, even if we burn with it. The room fell silent. The hegemony representatives understood. These were not bluffs. Humans, they had learned, did not bluff. They stated their intentions and then followed through with terrifying consistency. Trellick spoke up, his role as neutral observer giving him permission to intervene. Council members, I have studied these creatures extensively. They mean exactly what they say. They would rather die as a free species than live as conquered subjects. They will fight until there is nothing left on either side. That is not bravado. That is their nature. One of the council members looked at the humans with something approaching respect. You are asking us to treat you as equals. To give you everything you demand. What do we receive in return? The Secretary General answered, you receive peace. You keep your empire. You avoid a war that will cost you more than you can afford. You gain a trading partner instead of an enemy. And most importantly, you avoid giving other conquered species the idea that rebellion is possible. Because if word spreads that humanity defeated the hegemony, the British Prime Minister added, every oppressed world in your empire will rise up. You will face not one war but dozens. Can your military handle that? The threat was clear. The hegemony could continue this war and risk losing everything. Or they could negotiate and save face. The choice was between pride and survival. After a long silence, High Admiral Zenthar spoke. I will recommend to the Council that they accept your terms. With modifications, but we will accept the core demands. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The details were complex, but the outcome was clear. Earth would receive reparations, technology, and independence. The hegemony would withdraw all forces and recognize humanity as a sovereign power, with full rights in galactic affairs. The treaty was called the Sol Accords. It was signed by representatives of every human nation and the Zathari Hegemony Council. The ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy. After the signing, Admiral Martinez encountered Admiral Zenthar in a quiet corridor. The Zathari admiral looked at the human with his 3 eyes and spoke through a translator. I must know, if we had continued the war, would you truly have sacrificed everything? Martinez did not hesitate. Yes, without question. We would have burned the galaxy down before we surrendered. Why? What makes freedom so valuable that you would die for it? Because without freedom we are not human, Martinez replied. We are just animals, and we would rather die as humans than live as anything else. That is what you failed to understand. That is what your ancient charts tried to warn you about. Zenthar considered this. You said Earth is our neighbor now. I think that is not quite accurate. You are not neighbors. You are predators who have chosen not to attack us yet. Martinez smiled. Then I suggest you give us no reason to change our minds. Good day, Admiral. 5 years passed. Earth transformed. With access to galactic technology and trade, humanity advanced at a pace that shocked the rest of the galaxy. They built ships. They established colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. They opened embassies on a dozen worlds, but they also became something else, a military power. Other species began hiring human mercenaries and military advisors. The phrase human tactics became shorthand for aggressive, unpredictable warfare that prioritized winning over following conventions. Earth's economy boomed. Human engineers were sought after for their ability to fix anything with limited resources. Human doctors were valued for their experience treating species from death worlds. Human diplomats were feared for their willingness to walk away from bad deals. The galaxy learned to respect humanity. Not because humans were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were the most determined. They were the species that had looked at an impossible situation and decided to win anyway. In the hegemony archives, the file on Earth was updated. The ancient warning was still there, but now it had new notes appended by Admiral Kreenek before his retirement. Death World. Indigenous Species Survival Specialists. Designation Humans. Recommended action: do not engage under any circumstances. If engagement unavoidable, deploy overwhelming force and expect total war. Note: they call themselves human. This word now means nightmare in 47 galactic languages. They refuse to surrender. They adapt to any threat. They learn from every defeat. They remember every slight. They are the apex predators of a world that tried to kill them for millions of years, and they won. A new species discovered the database entry years later. Their scientists were excited. A pre-FTL world, recently discovered, seemed perfect for colonization. They began planning their invasion fleet. Their commander pulled up the file on the system. Sol 3, also known as Earth. He read through the hegemony's notes with growing alarm. Then he read the latest addendum written by a species that had tried trading with humans. Update: do not engage. They remember. They adapt. They win. We tried to cheat them in a trade deal. They destroyed our economy in retaliation. We tried to restrict their access to shipping lanes. They built their own and offered better rates. We tried to exclude them from the Galactic Council. They formed their own alliance, and half our members joined them instead. Learn from our mistakes, treat them with respect, trade fairly, and never ever threaten them. The cost is too high. The commander closed the file and canceled the invasion plans. Instead, he opened a diplomatic channel. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not to be conquered. They were to be respected, traded with fairly, and most importantly, left alone unless you wanted a fight that would cost more than you could afford to pay. Because Earth was more than a planet. It was a warning. A reminder that the universe was full of dangerous things, and some of the most dangerous wore human faces and spoke of peace while building weapons. And if you ignored that warning, if you attacked them anyway, then you would learn why the ancient surveys had marked their world with a single word that every species in the galaxy now understood: Death World.